Hey, my friends, happy Sunday. Do you remember me? I know it's been a while. I've been on the road. I was on tour with my art and storytelling show. It was amazing. If you'd like to know a little bit more about that, check out the links. I post a lot of pictures and stuff on my Facebook art page and also on my Patreon. I share vlogs and live chats and photos and stuff like that. So those are all below if you want to know a little bit more about my tour. Excuse me, my nose itches. But for now, I want to get back into these Sunday spiritual conversations with you. And I've been thinking a lot about the power of story. I just returned from my storytelling tour, which is always funny. Like, people sometimes think storytelling like library time with children, And that's fine. Children are always welcome to my show, but that's not really what it is. But then I also don't want to call it like adult storytelling. So I'm trying to figure that out. But I digress. So the power of stories, the stories that we tell ourselves, right? Our habituated, inherited mental stories about our worth, about our family members, about the world around us, about our destiny, things like that. And then the stories that we absorb from the culture that we live in, from the stories, the media that we absorbed as children and then as adults through the radio and music, through advertising, through the news, through movies and TV and all that stuff. And just to illustrate what I'm getting at here on how powerful stories can be and how important it is to really pay attention and to question what we are absorbing and where our own beliefs and prejudices and preconceptions and ideas come from. So I recently was learning about the Brothers Grimm, two brothers and professors who took all these oral fables and wrote them down in a canon, in a collection for the first time. And their mission, which I didn't really know beforehand, was actually to create a German identity through these stories. So it wasn't just to provide a collection of bedtime stories, it was actually to create a cultural identity for their country, for Germany. And I assume, their intentions were, human, and in some ways, kind of cool. Like, great, that seems like a worthy cause. But they did some very dangerous things. If you examine the stories as a whole, there is this undercurrent of morality that those who are beautiful, those who are young, those who are whole and unblemished, and those who are part of the clan, those who are part of the inner circle of people, the Germans, I guess. I mean, people who are like part of the family, part of the club, will be okay. They are innately superior. So in some cases, they're dishonest, etc., in these stories, but they triumph because in the stories, the youth and the beauty and the wholeness wins. And there's even a story that's completely anti-Semitic in this original canon of Grimm's stories. And the original oral story that they transcribed was not. It was, the character was a friar, and it was a commentary on the corruption of the church at that time in a very specific place. And they didn't want to upset authority, so they just decided to substitute a minority for the story. And I think you get where I'm going with this, how this collection of stories, of fairy tales, that was actually intended to form a national identity, what horrific seeds it laid for their country down the road. This superiority of a very narrow idea of like human worth being looking a certain way and being a certain age and being a certain emblem of sort of Olympian perfection, and this attitude towards outsiders or others or minorities. Huge example, but you get my drift, that stories are seeds and they will bear results. And it's so important to pay attention to what we are absorbing and what we are telling ourselves and what we are carrying around with ourselves. And so, yes, anyone who knows me personally knows that I really like to question what is in the media, whether it's news or movies or songs or whatever. Like, is this really healthy? Is this really true? Do I really know this whole story? But I want to focus a little bit more on the personal stories that we tell ourselves, the impressions we absorbed as children, and what we absorbed from our families, and how we have adapted to life. And I think a lot of us get stuck. We get stuck in these habits of shame. We get triggered by things and we can react with shame or guilt or resentment or fears. And we get in these loops, But it's all because of the stories that we have absorbed or told ourselves. And so I have a few tips for releasing ourselves from these stories. This is not original. I got this from several people, Marianne Williamson and a YouTuber called Praying Medic, but I've seen that it's helped a lot of other people, so I want to share it. First step is to recognize, oh my goodness, this is my pattern. This is the place where I get stuck. Okay? And know that recognizing it is a powerful opportunity that now you can move towards healing. It's the first step. The second step is to go into the feeling. Not so much adding story to it, but physically go in to what it feels like in your body to be having this emotional reaction. And maybe it's like a tension in your head. Maybe your throat closes up. Maybe you feel like a weight or a drop in your chest. Maybe you're short of breath. But go into the feeling. Have the courage to go into the feeling and really identify it. And then turn to your higher power and actually address your higher power. It helps to verbalize this. Say, Jesus, God, Baha'u'llah, higher power, whatever works for you, whatever your direct line feels like. Say, God, please take this from me. So you're using your personal will to hand it over. You've identified it, you've recognized it, you've been honest about it, you've accepted it, and you open your hand and say, I invite you to please take this from me. And then the next step is to say, heal this part of my soul. And remember, the source that created the universe is more than capable of doing this. And lastly, say, I receive healing. So try that in the places that you get stuck. I have a personal experience. It's a little different, but it's the same principle. I had a dream many, many years ago that was 4 different pieces of my life. I feel like I saw my life. It was maidenhood, womanhood, cronehood, and then old age and death. And in many ways, it was an amazing dream, and I will never forget it. But there's this one part that scares me, where I walked away from an opportunity in the dream. And I didn't realize till recently how I have this fear. Oh my gosh, I've seen my life, and I'm going to make this decision. Or this part of my life is doomed because I saw it in a dream. Maybe so, maybe not. I'm a big believer in God's will, and it's my role to be content with whatever God wants for me. But if this is just some story I've been telling myself, ain't no way that I want to be stuck with this. So what I've been doing is recently I've started going back to what I remember of that dream and making another choice, making a conscious other choice. And I've seen this work in other experiences in my life, so I'm going to see how this goes, and this is something that I'm going to be focusing on during the week, and I would love to hear your experience of identifying and releasing your stories and replacing them with the ones that empower you and bring you joy and enable you to be more free and present in life. All right, you guys, have a great week. I'm glad to be back. I will see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.